Okay, so good evening. I'm going to start the class now. Sorry, I was again taking some time. All right, seeing some things to start with the class. All right, without any interruptions. Today we're going to cover two new lessons. Why? Because this is going to be the beginning of unit number 3. Okay, this is going to be, well, today on Wednesday, and the last two classes, right, for the last unit number 4, will be on Friday and next Monday. Okay, let's take that into account. We're about to finish this new course. We're going fast. And then we start with A10, right? But we have 3 more courses to go, right? A10, A11, and A12. Okay, but remember, let's keep working on Pearson. Let's keep practicing. As we don't have the practice in class, it's important, very important, that you practice everything by yourself to see, well, that everything is correct. All right. So these are actually two short and very, let's say, well, they are not complex. They are simple lessons. It's important to be sure that everything is clear, but we have to cover them. Okay, we will begin with models of necessity. So we know what models are. Okay, if we have to organize these 3 ideas, all right, some people will change them, but actually here they are in the correct form, in the correct order. Must is the strongest, I've got to is in the middle, and have to is not as strong as the other two. Okay, so that's the correct order. Going from number 3 being the least strong of these 3, and number 1 being the strongest, right? That's the strongest of these 3 elements. Now, must is a model. I've got to is going to be close to an expression or a model like verb that we use also for necessity. And I have to, well, that's a verb, right? That we can use again as an expression for obligation or necessity. Okay, so again, even though our title says models of necessity, here we're using one model like verb, and one verb to use as this expression. Okay, let's take that into account. Now, have to is very simple. Have is, of course, a verb that we learned right when we're learning the language in the first classes. Have is one of the 4 main and most basic verbs in English. And we know that if we use have to plus a verb, it means that it's obligation or necessity. And in this case, it is necessary, right? Use the expression have to talk about something that we need to do. This expression can be used in all tenses, okay? Present, past, future. So she has to show her ID. That's again present, simple present, to show a necessity, to show in this case, yes, it's a necessity, right? They had to park in a different place, simple past, a necessity in the past, and John will have to renew his permit if he wants to enroll. Again, right? Same. This is necessity, but in this case, this is for past. All right? Again, then this is not the strongest right option that we got, but it is still necessity and it's very common to use. Now, if it's a negative, it is not going to be a necessity. Actually, it's not necessary. It is not going to be an obligation, all right? It is only going to be not necessary. You don't have to do it, but it's not prohibition. There is no a consequence, okay? There is no consequence if you don't do this. So she doesn't have to show her ID to enter the building. If she wants, she can show her ID, but as that's not necessary, right? So, but what I'm showing also here is that it's not going to be like negative, right? If she shows her ID, she's not going to be punished or she's not going to receive a fine. There's not going to be a negative consequence, right? It's just that it is not necessary. They didn't have to park in a different place. Okay, it was not necessary to do it, but they did it perhaps. And John won't have to renew his permit. Same idea. This is for future. again. All right, and well, have to, then it shows in negative, it shows that something is not necessary. So in the future, that won't be a necessity, right? John won't have to renew his permit. That won't be a necessity for the future. Have got to is stronger than have to. All right. This expression is very similar to have to, but it's stronger. Got is not past. Okay, it's just an expression. Use this expression only in present tense and in most common form. Okay, the most common form is affirmative. All right. So Oliver has got to print those documents for tomorrow. So that's a stronger necessity than the previous one. Mary's got to study harder to pass the exam. They have got to send their resume if they want to apply. We've got to learn the note on the staff to read sheet music. All right, and here it would be actually in plural, right? The notes. But that's it. Have got to then is stronger than have to, and you need this structure completely if you want to be formal. It is common, right, in informal English to say got, right? I gotta go, right? I gotta finish now. That's great as you're speaking. But again, for writing and for formal even speaking, it's better if it is in a, well, this, right? Um, that's the second one. I'm thinking of some difference that I can mention, but it's just that this is a little bit stronger than have to. Now, this is the strongest, right, of them all. And of course, it's stronger than have to, and it's stronger than have got to. Okay, use this expression only in the present tense. Oliver must print those documents. Mary must study harder. They must send their resume. We must learn the location of the notes, and so on and so forth. Okay, so must is a modal, and it's a very strong modal to use it with obligation, to use it with something that has to be done, that must be done. Okay, a very strong necessity, a very strong necessity. So same example, right? I'm gonna go to read everything, just a couple of them. Oliver must bring those documents for tomorrow. If he doesn't, there's going to be a consequence. So when there's a consequence, it's a good idea to use must because that's an obligation. And if you don't do something that is an obligation, something could happen, right? There is always going to be a consequence. Then number three, I'm not reading everything again. They must send their resume if they want to apply. Okay, so again, it has to be done in that way. That's the way it has to be done. It's not an option, it's not a weak necessity, it is strong. It has to be done once again. Now, when they are used in negative, remember, have to in negative, it's not prohibition, it's just something that it's unnecessary. If you do it, you do it. If you don't, well, don't, right? But differently to what we see, all right, in the case of have to, when we use must, we can do this, all right? Use any of these options to talk about prohibition, something that you're not allowed to do. Do not contrast must, okay? Must without contrast and cannot, being like that together, it's also very strong. You must not leave the class before the survey. They cannot speak loudly during the exam. She must not hand in her assignment without showing her ID. And Peter can't stay here after. Sorry, after the recess. Okay, so in here I think it's clear. Remember, prohibition, something that you cannot do, that you must not do. All right? Now for questions in different tenses. If we want to ask questions or use different tenses about necessities, we must use have to. Okay, so for the questions and different tenses, let's use have to. Do we have to bring our papers for Monday? She's had to stay longer, right, to finish her assignment. That's not a question, right? It's just different tenses. This is an example for different tenses. What did you have to take? Sorry, what did you have to do? Okay, I omitted that word. Now, what did you have to do to take that course? All right, and will we have to work on a new presentation for next week? So in all these cases, we are seeing the variations that we can have with have to. It is flexible. It can be in many different tenses. It's okay if you use it as part of your questions, all right? And again, have to is very common, and that's something also we're taking a look here. Now, as always, you have some extra links to practice to complete your details. Remember that this is extra. This is not something that you have to do, but if you have some problems, if you realize and identify that you, all right, let's say, well, first, if you have doubts, it's important to let me know, right? To solve the doubts in class. That's why we have these classes. We're supposed to solve those doubts, practice, and so on. If that's not the case, these links can help because they are auto-corrected. If not, again, let's do some actual research. But again, I'm always going to be here in the classes that we got in this schedule so that we can, well, work on everything we got to work. Okay, so with that, we have one more to go, one left to go. Infinitives of purpose, something that we covered before, but here they are going to show us, all right, like more elements to be more formal and one alternative. Okay, so I'll start in a minute, please. Okay, so let's finish then the class with this presentation. All right. Um, Infinitives of purpose. We took a look at infinitives twice, even perhaps three times. Okay, but at least I think twice. In these times that we covered infinitives, we learned that we can use it mainly in four cases, right? We use it as part of your subject, use it as object after some verbs. I believe we took a look at the presentation. Perhaps in the future, we know we can use it also with adjectives, but I believe we didn't cover that yet, okay? But we can use it with adjectives. We can use it right when mentioning another person as part of our idea, something like, I want you to do this for me, I need you to go there, and so on and so forth. And also purpose, right? That was the last one. I study English to do this, to travel to the US. That's the last one that this presentation will be about. That's why it's going to be short, because it's only one way of using infinitives, but we're going to see the normal or the informal way, the formal way to do it, and the negative way, and the alternatives that we got. Okay, it's only going to be mainly one alternative. But let's begin, okay, so that we see what we're talking about. The same review as I was doing, right? Let's remember that we use infinitives in specific situations. There are four main ways of using it, right? We mentioned this as a subject of a sentence, after specific verbs, with another person that performs the action, to talk about purpose. Now, that fourth one is the one we need to pay attention to in this specific case. Purpose, right? Today's lesson will be focused on infinitives of purpose. It means that this structure will be used to talk about reasons, objectives, or goals, all right, that we have when we perform certain actions. Take a look at these examples. Now, these are common, they are not informal, or rather, this is the commonest way to use it. She's been studying English to apply to scholarship. They go to the gym every weekend to be in shape. Peter listens to podcasts in French to improve his listening skills. Mary and Laura have traveled to the US to study a master's degree. We went over the last lesson to remember what we did. Okay, so in order to say why something happened, or will happen, we use infinitives, right? It's just like saying because. In the first case, you can say, she's been studying English because she wants to apply, right, to scholarship. So instead of saying that, to show purpose, to show what's the reason for something happening, the infinitive is a good alternative. All right, and this is the structure, right? The idea that you got, she doesn't eat fats, the infinitive, to be, and the complement, on a diet. So she doesn't eat fats. Why? What's the reason? What's the purpose, right, of doing that? It is that she wants to be on a diet, but you directly say to be on a diet. He studies hard to pass the test. They'll buy a car to travel to La Paz. We stayed home to watch the movie. I went shopping to get some food. All right, affirmative. Now, that's the common way. Now, remember, we need to take a look at some alternatives, right? And ways to make it more formal. This is one way. If you want to be formal for your TOEFL test, for, well, any type of academic or scientific writing, those papers, well, anything in general that requires you to be formal, use in order to. So same logic, I'm just going to read three of them. She doesn't eat fats in order to be on a diet. They'll buy a car in order to travel to La Paz. We stayed home in order to watch the movie, right? So why? In order to. That's the same as the previous one, but of course, if you use the complete form, it is always more formal, okay? It's really formal. Now, negative. In negative, remember, for infinitives, the order is not to plus the verb in the base form. You don't say to not, you say not to. All right? She doesn't eat fats in order not to be with overweight. She studies or he studies hard in order not to fail the test. They'll buy a car in order not to take a bus. We stayed home in order not to miss the movie. I want to buy some food in order not to cook at home. Okay, so in order not to do something, you do something else. All right, so that's how we use it in negative. Now, this is the alternative, and with this again, we're going to be finishing the class. Okay, we can also use so as to plus infinitive. All right, that's the alternative. In order to is a bit more formal, but the meaning is the same as so as to. So these three ways are correct. They are the same. But again, we're going from not that formal to, no, actually, not that, that's not correct. We're just showing the three of them because the correct order would be with in order to. That's the most formal. Okay, so as to is an alternative. So it would be, I went on holiday to relax. I went on holiday so as to relax. And the last one, the most formal, I went on holiday in order to relax. Okay, that's what I explained also there. But remember, in order to and so as to is the same. Okay, it gives the same idea. We can use a negative infinitive of purpose by adding not before to. We know that. So with so as to, we can use that logic as well. I drank coffee so as not to fall asleep. He got up very quietly so as not to wake up the children. Okay? Consider that, please. It is very important to take those elements into account. Again, a short lesson. Those are the two lessons for today. Remember, once again, you can use just infinitive, the infinitive with a formal structure in order to, and so as to have alternatives. That's it. Just remember these rules, those formulas, and I'm sure that everything is going to be all right, in the sense of using this without any problems. So again, that's it for now. I'm going to finish here. I'm just saving the last presentation for Wednesday, plus the extra presentations that I'm showing you this time about speaking, right? That's it again. I hope you have a good rest of the day. Well, I'll continue on Wednesday.